Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Jermall Charlo versus Thomas LaManna fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So this is the return of Jermall Charlo yet again. He's had a bit more time out and he's making another return against a guy in which nobody really cares to see him in against, to be completely honest. It's seemingly one of them shows which is the fight before the fight. Realistically, we have Jermall Charlo on the card, we have Caleb Plant on the card, two big names there which are standout PBC names, and to be honest, PBC are needing them to become good and needing them for the big fights, because a lot of their fighters have been going over to fight on Riyadh season shows. So the likes of Jermall Charlo and the likes of Caleb Plant are really important for PBC to like I say, still come good and still sell out arenas and still bring that entertainment that they once did in their careers. And both of them are in definitely interesting positions, like I say, in their careers. And it's not necessarily bad positions, because they can both perhaps go on from maybe a win here to then go on to fight each other to then maybe go on to a world title. But they both, have to get through tough contenders to an extent here, which, again, like I say, it's two fights in which nobody really cares too much to see, but at the same time, we're excited to see them both together on the same card, which is why they have put them both together. Two-star names. If they were just both on individual cards, then I don't really think really people would care at all. So, like I said, they had to put both the names together. But like I say, for Jermall Charlo, it's been a while since we've seen him. I mean, we saw him against Benavidez Jr. That was his last fight, and that was a little bit ago now, and he got a good victory there. That was again, coming off not fighting for a couple of years. I believe he's only had two fights in 4 years or something like that. He really hasn't been fighting consistently. He got stripped of his WBC, I believe it was, middleweight title, and I mean, I don't know if that was due to inactivity or if that was due to something that was going on the outside with him getting arrested and stuff like that. I think there is definitely going to be perhaps a shift in which version of Jermall Charlo we get in this fight, because again, he's been through seemingly quite a lot outside of the ring, and he's been getting himself in trouble, which we see a lot of fighters have, like that happens with a lot of fighters. And I think mentally he's been struggling with his mental health and that side of things as well. So I think he was at one point prepared to, stop boxing or, not make a return, and was just going to happily leave with his career, which has been a really good career. I mean, he's still become a two-weight world champion, and he's been a star name, and he's had some real headline highlight moments. Yes, I suppose on paper he hasn't had the biggest of matchups as a champion. Not to say that he's been avoiding these fights, but at the same time, he hasn't ever really gone for these big fights. He's been talked about fighting a Canelo for ages. That was seemingly, I think, close to happening at one point, and that obviously didn't happen. And there has been seemingly various names linked with Charlo at times. The likes of Crawford, I believe, was linked with him at one point, and so there has been options there for big fights. But when you look for his career, there hasn't been too many huge names. I mean, Austin Trout was a good name that he fought at one point, but that was a Trout who went on to lose a couple afterwards and was on a bit of a downward kind of spiral in his career. But he was a great fighter in his day and definitely did overachieve, I suppose, Austin Trout. But again, other than that, Derevianchenko, he's a very tough and formidable opponent, but to have the world title defense, it's not, like I say, a huge name. And so he's fought some good guys. They haven't been excellent guys, but he's been able to get some good knockout victories and, like I say, sold well. And now he's coming off a performance versus Benavidez Jr., which was a good performance from him. I mean, saying he had the timeout that he did, perhaps he didn't look as sharp, and perhaps he wasn't really moving too well or anything like that. He wasn't doing the best defensively, but he wasn't really getting hurt too badly. He could deal with the aggression of Benavidez Jr., and he was able to distribute his own shots back. I think he was throwing combinations well. Typically, he has got a really good jab. I don't think he used it a crazy amount, but it is really good, and I do really like his kind of lead hand screw uppercut in which he throws. That can be a really nice shot. I think his timing is still there, that he showcased that in that Benavidez fight as well. Yes, Benavidez is an opponent in which you can time quite easily because, like I say, he's an aggressive front foot come forward fighter. But you still have to be there to land the shot, to throw the shot, to use the uppercut, or whatever whatever punch you want to throw. I think Charlo did that well. He is typically a good mid-range fighter. I still don't believe he's excellent in close, and that's why if he does go on to fight somebody like a Canelo, he might struggle fighting in close there. But at the same time, Canelo slowing down. If Jermall Charlo showcases some of the speed and hand in which he used to have, then he could definitely cause him problems. But with him also now moving up into the super middleweight division, I think that could definitely play an interesting factor to see what version of him we get. Jermall Charlo could have really damaged his potential by not fighting more consistently, because at one point, in 2019, he'd already become, I believe, a two-weight world champion, and he was tipped for great things. He was only 29 at that point, and now it's 2025. He's now 35, and it's a different point in his career. Yes, you can achieve great things when you are 35, and being in boxing, he could make a comeback. He hasn't had too many devastating fights. He hasn't been completely beaten up in his career. I suppose to an extent the timeout may have helped in that aspect, because he isn't going through continuous wars like certain older fighters are. But having the distractions outside the ring, the talks of him drinking a lot and things like that, getting caught drink driving and things like that, I'm sure that's probably not going to help him. Having that in your system is not going to ever help. So he's going to have to have cut that out fully if he's wanting to really contend at the top level. And like I said, there's definitely a few things that could factor in to see, that could perhaps stop him from ever really living up to the potential in which he does have. Because, yes, two-weight world champion is a great achievement, but again, he had that potential. He was so hyped and really, had the fans behind him that he could have gone on to achieve a lot. But like I say, it will be interesting to see if he can still do it at the age that he's at now. And, the Charlo twins, again, this might be this might be near the end of the hype behind them, with Jermall Charlo losing badly to Canelo and inevitably not even really putting up much of a tough test. Jermall Charlo's got a lot of pressure onto him. Yes, arguably he's always been the better fighter out of the two, but he's never, like I say, had the same tests as what Jermall has taken. And so, yeah, this could be the end, like I say, of the hype of that Charlo name, which will be a real shame. But, for the moment, they're still getting these fights in which arguably are gimme fights to an extent. Of course, Thomas LaManna is going to be a good acid test and a good test to see if he can deal with being in the super middleweight division, because, LaManna's got a big frame, big figure. He's a come forward fighter in his own right, and he will try and go for an upset. And yes, if you look at his record, he did get stopped badly via knockout and TKO in round one versus Erislandy Lara, but Lara's still a really formidable champion. He's yes, he's on the older side of things, but his style is still very awkward, very difficult to be able to deal with. And that was a while ago, and LaManna has gone away. He has taken a noticeable step down in opponent, but he's moved up into the super middleweight division himself. He's gotten comfortable there, and he's been on a good run of wins, and he's coming off a few good stoppage defeats against, like I say, opponents in which aren't awful opponents. They're opponents in which are just taking him over and just, like I say, giving him that experience, trying to get him back into a good position. And he's done that now, and this is his probable last chance for a big fight, and he's definitely taken it. And he has an opportunity here to really shock everybody, because yes, like I say, the Charlo name is fading away a bit, but there's still hype behind it. Charlo's still unbeaten, so LaManna could step in and cause a huge upset here and win this WBA Continental America's super middleweight title, which, yes, isn't really a major title, but nonetheless, it would be a huge win for LaManna. Do I think he's going to do it? No, I think that Jermall Charlo's going to be able to win via KO in round 4. I think Thomas LaManna typically, like I say, has a come forward style, but I could see him backing off against Charlo. He is the more natural at the moment super middleweight, but I think, Charlo came in big against Benavidez, came in overweight against Benavidez, so I suppose maybe Charlo's the more natural super middleweight, to be honest, because he's he basically fought his last fight there, and he is physically the stronger guy. I think he controls the center typically well. If he's gonna want to come and control the center, I feel like he could do that. I think he could offload some really good combinations, and I think LaManna may get flashbacks to the last time that he fought at a big stage, being against Lara, and I think inevitably Charlo is going to be able to stop him, like say in round 4, get a big stoppage victory there, and reignite his career to an extent, and hopefully go on to fight the winner of Caleb Plant versus Armando Resendiz. But if not, then perhaps a Canelo Crawford fight could happen. I'm sure fans would still like to tune into, the winner of Canelo Crawford fight, Jermall Charlo, but at the same time, there might be a rematch clause with Canelo Crawford, so that might all be tied up for a little while. Or perhaps another name if Plant loses against Resendiz and they don't want to go down that Resendiz route, then something like a Munguia could be an option there, which could be a great fight. But yeah, to speak about this co-main event, arguably joint main event to be honest, in Caleb Plant versus Jose Armando Resendiz. This is for the WBA interim world super middleweight title, Caleb Plant's title, and again it's an interesting test. This one arguably I question more because I'm not too sure why Resendiz is getting given this opportunity. He's not a bad fighter. I mean, he beat Jarrett Hurd via stoppage in round 10, and that was a Jarrett Hurd who was again on the latter side of his career, and he was getting caught with a lot of shots in that, and Resendiz wasn't doing anything too crazy, but he was just continually landing against Hurd and inevitably managed to cause enough damage to be able to stop Hurd. But again, like I say, Hurd's always taken quite a lot of damage in his career. He's been able to achieve a lot, saying he does take a lot of punishment, but not at that point, not at that age. And yeah, well, we've seen Hurd when he's fought more recently. He's retired now, but when he fought Rosario, that was a draw. It wasn't a great fight either, and so that was against a slow Jarrett Hurd, to be honest. And then he went on to fight Elijah Garcia. That was before Garcia had that split decision draw versus loss versus Davis. So that was when Garcia was riding a high and Garcia was able to stop Resendiz. He did knock him down once, but then he got back up Resendiz and did well for a little bit before getting the ref kind of called it off and said it was a bit too much. And Resendiz is a tough guy. He can take a good shot. Plant is coming off a fight where he got dropped himself. I mean, he fought Canelo. That was quite a big defeat for him. He was, of course, champion before that. Then it all got built up to a big undisputed fight between him and Canelo, and that was a huge fight for Plant, and that definitely ignited his career onto the main stage and really got all eyes on him. And he fought well in that fight. He had bits of success early and did eventually lose, but that's when Canelo really turned up the gears and he did get stopped. Then when he fought Benavidez, similar type of thing happened, but he didn't get stopped. He fought well early, landed early, used his speed well early on, but then inevitably Benavidez came good into the later rounds and made Plant looked quite weak into the later rounds and really busted him up, and inevitably Plant did really well to just survive all the rounds at the end. So again, that was quite a brutal fight and probably could have taken a few years out of his career, but he did well to survive that without getting knocked down. And then he went on to fight McCumbee in his last fight, and that was a fight in which was meant to be a bit of a get back fight and against the name McCumbee, who hasn't really fought anybody of too much note. And then he did get dropped, Plant, and that was, a bit of a flash knockdown. He came back good, ended up getting a big stoppage victory himself, and that was against, an undefeated, I believe he was at the time, in McCumbee, or, somebody who at least got a good record. So that was a good win. Of course, we've now seen McCumbee go on to fight Pacheco. That's going to happen soon. That's a good fight. But for Plant, that was a good win for him. Like I say, a fight in which he needed to get back in the winning column. I still think he is somebody who can fight really well even if he is coming off a loss. When he fought Canelo and went on to then fight Dirrell, that was a massive knockout and a brutal, beautiful, to be fair, on the eye at the same time, knockout in which Dirrell got flattened, and the body shot to the head combination, the twists into his punches was really well landed and really well placed. And so I still think there is a lot to give in Plant's career. I think he's going to be able to win this fight via TKO in round 6. If he doesn't win this fight via stoppage, then it's quite a bad result, to be completely honest, because of course what we saw Elijah Garcia do was of course be able to stop him, and Elijah Garcia has shown that he is a high level fighter, but at the same time he's coming off two close split decision fights against, you know, not quite world level type opposition. So it will, you know, it will look bad if he doesn't get a good stoppage here, Caleb Plant. But I believe he will. I believe he'll be able to stop him. Resendiz just comes forwards and just kind of stands quite in front of you a lot of the time. So if he's going to try and do that against Plant, I think that will be just what Plant will want, to be completely honest. He will stand straight in front of you, but then not close the distance enough to be able to, you know, not give you the space. He will give you the space for Resendiz, in which Plant would love to work in, and I think will do really well to work in. So I'll say TKO, could be a devastating knockout at the same time, but I'll say round 6. And then, of course, you know, perhaps go on to hopefully to fight the winner of Charlo LaManna, if it does all go in the way in which PBC, I'm sure, want, and then that could set up a big PBC show. If not, you know, I don't think he would get the opportunity to fight a Canelo because of what happened, you know, because there's quite a few people waiting to fight Canelo, you know, the likes of Charlo, the likes of Mbili, perhaps the winner of you know, well, perhaps the winner of Blanga Shiraz. If Shiraz wins, then that's another fighter they're already waiting. And so I believe there is too many people waiting to fight Canelo. So I don't really think he's even really looking at somebody like a Plant to fight. So perhaps the winner of Blanga Shiraz. Maybe if Blanga wins, of course, he's in a similar position, losing to Canelo. That could be a good fight to be made. Or again, you know, touching upon Munguia, that could be a fight. Of course, he lost to Canelo. He then just recently avenged his his defeat to Bruno Serace. Now he's back in contention again, but isn't going to get a world title shot, so perhaps that could happen. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.